What is rarebit anyway? Rarebit is translated as a baked cheese. And looking at it, you can see is more of a cheese sauce, but instead of how we think of cheese sauces today as maybe a condiment or an appetizer, rarebit is served as part of an entree. Many of you are probably familiar with the very delicious Welsh rarebit, which is a cheese sauce that's flavored with ale, Worcestershire, and mustard, giving it a very distinct and pleasant taste. In fact, when I was in England last, when I was in a pub, it was right there on the menu. And of course I ordered it, and it was as delicious as always. So there are other types of rarebit, and I don't know that all of them have been around quite as long as Welsh rarebit, but it seems to be dated back to the 1700s, which is very easily believed because things like bread, ale, and cheese have been around for quite some time. So there's other types of rarebit in this book, and I wanted to start with the tomato rarebit. There are Welsh rarebit recipes in the book, but I'll save those for another video, another time. So let's get into making this delicious tomato rarebit. I'm going to get started by melting some butter. While the butter melts in the pan, I'm going to beat up the egg and some of the light cream to add in just a few minutes. The butter's melted, and I'm going to add an equal amount of white flour. And this, of course, will be the thickening for the sauce. I'll give it a good stir with my flat roux whisk and let it cook for about 60 seconds to get rid of the flour taste. Alright, it's been about a minute, and I'll add in the rest of the cream that I did not put into the egg and let that get very thick. You can see it comes together quite quickly. And from here, the next step is to add the tomatoes. The recipe calls for stewed tomatoes, so if you have fresh tomatoes that you've cooked down, certainly use those, but I have canned diced tomatoes that I'm using. And it's going to look like queso, but it does not taste like queso. Cheese sauce can be a little deceptive to the eye. They're all delicious though, aren't they? So the recipe suggests a little bit of baking soda, and I see this in quite a few of the recipes that use tomato in the book. The baking soda balances out the acidity. Many of us use a pinch of sugar in this day and age, but she uses a baking soda in the book. Maybe try that next time. Depending what your dish is, if you find your tomatoes are a little acidic, they can be unpredictable little creatures, can't they? Right, now it's time for the cheese, and I'm using sharp cheddar, not extra sharp. There's a recipe for oyster rarebit that uses a mild cheese, and I will make that at some point. I have to think about which cheese would constitute being mild for that one, because cheddar would overpower oysters. And I'm going to add in the seasonings. Very simple. Salt, some dry mustard, and pepper. And since the cheese is somewhat salty, I'm going to start with just a very small amount of salt, but a little bit heavier with the mustard, and some black pepper. I just want to let the cheese get melted down. I use hand chopped cheese because pre-shredded cheese has a coating on it, and that will affect the flavor just a bit. And then of course the beaten egg with the rest of the cream. It's becoming really smooth. Delicious looking, isn't it? You may have heard me say I don't even like tomatoes very much, but I was certainly enjoying this sauce. I knew it would be tasty. The cheese is almost melted. It's looking like the similar size and shape to the tomatoes, so it can be a little hard to tell, but it's almost there. I'm going to give it a little bit of a taste, just check the seasonings. And it's rich and flavorful, but it could use a little brightness and a little more salt. And I'm thinking some heat from Kashmiri chili powder. If you've never had it, it's just a very gentle warmth. It's not as spicy or fruity as cayenne. It's just a nice, pleasant warmth. And I use it quite a bit. I'm very pleased I discovered this. I'll link it below. It can be hard to find in a grocery store, but once you have it on hand, you'll probably find yourself using it more than you think you would. It's just ground up pepper. There's no other seasoning in it. It's not actual chili powder blend. And it's a fine powder, like a talcum powder. And as much as that looks like, it really doesn't have a lot of heat. There's enough you know it's there. But for people that don't like really spicy food, or maybe you just don't want a lot of heat in whatever it is you're making, this is perfect. I think of it as adding a depth of flavor, not just heat. And now it's delicious. Just perfect. It will be really good on my freshly baked whole grain sourdough bread when it comes out of the oven. All right, let's get this plated up. Got my fresh sourdough, those gorgeous bubbles I got. If you make your own sourdough, you know how exciting it is when you get your bubbles in there. All right, 4 slices. Put some of this rich rarebit sauce over. That looks very tasty. And normally you would toast your bread, but this is so crusty, you can hear it. It doesn't need to be toasted. Now baguettes have that nice crunchy crust. It's delicious. Very good indeed. This is a nice option if you want to make rarebit and you don't want to use ale for, whatever your choice is to do that or not to use that. This will give you that wonderful depth of flavor that doesn't just taste like, cheese whiz. Not that there's anything wrong with that if that's what you and your family enjoy. This is just more elevated. So delicious.